Welcome back everybody to another one of my aviation history videos, and this is episode 26 in my series on the history of the RCAF. Now today we're going to be looking at the history of 423 Squadron. Now from its start in World War II as a Coastal Command anti-submarine unit, into a post-war fighter unit, and finally today as a maritime helicopter unit, 423 has had a pretty long and almost continuous career since its formation in World War II. But before we get too far into this, as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. Just before we jump into the video, I want to say thank you to everybody out there who is watching this. If you haven't yet and you like what you're seeing, down below, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That'll let all of you know when I release new content, and I have quite a bit of content lined up for this channel in the next little while, hopefully stuff that all of you will enjoy. So please go ahead and do that. If you'd like to help out in a bit more of a concrete way, and you haven't and you want to, down below you'll find a link to my coffee account. You can go over there and buy me a coffee. I always have a coffee on the go. The basement, it's cold, coffee keeps me warm, and it keeps me going on those long days. But please don't feel obligated. I'm not begging for money. I do all of this because I love what I do, and I get to take you along for the ride. So before we get any farther, and without any further ado, let's jump into this video and take a look at the history of 423 Squadron. That's why I need the coffee. 423 Squadron was formed on April 18th of 1942 at Ohan, Scotland as a general reconnaissance squadron, and was the final RCAF unit formed as a coastal unit. They were assigned to 15 Group and given the squadron code AB. It didn't receive their first aircraft till July, when they got Sunderland flying boats. During the gap between its formation in May and the Sunderlands in July, the unit trained on 209 Squadron Lyrics, similar to 422 Squadron. The unit flew their first operational mission on August 23rd when Sunderland W6053, coded ABE, flew a 13-hour anti-submarine mission with no sightings recorded. On November 2nd, the unit moved to Castle Archdale and was located here for the rest of the war, and the unit focused mainly on the North Atlantic, the North Sea, and the Norwegian coast, a cold and most often unhospitable area to be flying over. In early 1943, the unit dropped the code AB and adopted the single identifier 3, in line with other Coastal Command units at the time. Now, from what I can find, this was due to Coastal Command dropping the individual squadron codes in late 1942, but then there being confusion when there were multiple units at the same base with the same aircraft type, and this led to the adoption of single numbers based on the squadron number. Now, this worked with the lowest squadron number being 1, and then 2, and then 3, going up in sequential order. Now, if a squadron moved, then their number would change based on what was at the new base, but not necessarily in numerical order, just to mess things up. Now, as you can see here, here's a picture of 206 Squadron, and the early time frame had one letter number, and a later time frame had a different number. 423 Squadron scored its first confirmed kill on May 12th of 1943 when Sunderland W6006 helped sink a U-boat in the North Atlantic. It shared the kill with two surface ships, HMCS Drumheller and HMS Lagan. As the war progressed and the threat in the North Atlantic diminished, the need for the long-range patrol units became less and less. Due to this, on June 5th of 1945, the unit ceased operations as a patrol unit and converted to the long-range transport role, in preparation for operations in the Far East in support of Tiger Force. On August 8th, the unit relocated to Bassingbourn, leaving their Sunderlands in Scotland, and began to convert to the Liberator C Mark 6 and the C Mark 7. Now, the C Mark 6 was an RAF B-24J bomber converted to transport, and the C Mark 7 was the British designation for the C-87, which was a factory-built transport version of the B-24D. With the abrupt end of hostilities in the Far East after the 2 atomic bombs were dropped, the need for these long-range transport units disappeared, and 423 Squadron was disbanded on September 4th, 1945, having only partially converted to the Liberators. During World War II, the unit flew 16,277 operational hours on 1,392 sorties. It was credited with 3 U-boats sunk, 2 shared, 1 damaged, and 25 submarines spotted, and it dropped a total of 201 depth charges. It suffered 6 aircraft lost, with 40 aircrew killed or missing, 2 wounded, and 1 injured. The post-war life of 423 Squadron began on June 1st of 1953 when it was reformed at St. Hubert as an all-weather fighter unit. It was assigned the squadron code NQ and received their first aircraft, CF-100 Mark IIIs, in July. In February of 1955, the unit replaced the Mark IIIs with the Mark IVBs, and on February 12th of 1957, they flew to Europe as part of Nimble Bat 2. Now, you can see my video on Operation Nimble Bat flights above, as well as all of the other RCAF transition flights. Just before their flight to Europe, the unit flew a small number of Mark Vs, while the Mark IVs were being overhauled by Avro and painted in camouflage. The squadron joined No. 2 Fighter Group, and it was based at Grosse-Coin, France. It took the place of 416 Squadron, which was the Sabre unit selected to be sent home. Now, you can also see my history on the 416 Squadron in the link above. They provided some of the only all-weather fighter support onto the NATO defense missions in Europe until the CF-100 was withdrawn from frontline service in the RCAF in December of 1962. On December 31st of 1962, the unit was disbanded while still stationed at Grosse-Coin. In 1974, the unit was reformed as a maritime helicopter unit flying the CH-124 Sea King. It was based at CFB Shearwater and provided land and shipboard support for the Atlantic Fleet. In 1991, a contingent of 423 Squadron, based on Royal Canadian Navy ships, helped support the ground mission during the Gulf War. Once again, after the terrorist attacks on September 11th of 2001, 423 Squadron deployed with their aircraft aboard RCN ships to the Arabian Sea in support of ongoing operations in the Middle East. In January of 2018, the unit retired their Sea Kings and adopted the new CH-148 Cyclone. The unit also suffered the only loss of a CH-48 when, on April 30th of 2020, an aircraft attached to the HMCS Fredericton crashed in the Ionian Sea while participating in a NATO exercise. All members aboard were killed, and the cause was traced to an autopilot disagreement caused by crew inputs. Today, 423 Squadron continues to provide maritime helicopter support to the RCAF on the east coast of Canada, as well as on ships based in the Atlantic Fleet when they travel overseas. Now, with the recent introduction of the CH-148 Cyclone, I don't see 423 Squadron going anywhere anytime soon, and I can foresee it for many years in the future, continuing to support both the RCAF as well as the other branches of the Canadian Forces for many, many years to come. On that note, thank you all for watching. We'll see you all next time.